Now,
Um,
is there anything specifically that you have been
well,
thinking about, or any questions that have come up? Have you been,
I
in
have.
your reading or?
There is, yeah, there is a question I have. With me, looking little by little and more into the Hongwanji, the Nishi Hongwanji, um,
Mm,
and possibly becoming a part of that. I
yeah.
have, I've, and looking at things I've seen on YouTube and
Mm,
past and in present, there seems to be, some really good things where the teaching, it's like very, it's very direct kind of
mm,
transmitted teaching about what was taught by Shinran or Renyo or the
hmm.
history, the history of of Jodo Shinshu, or things like that. But then there's sometimes where um it gets a bit like, okay, well, why are we even talking about this? Do you know what I mean? Um,
Yes, yes, I know what you mean.
you
Exactly.
know,
One of the
it's
one of the reasons why I came to Japan to study Jodo Shinshu
okay,
and didn't
okay,
stay in America.
because it is the Western stuff that I'm seeing. It's the Western, even though
Yeah.
the ones that are good, the ones that are really the ones the most of the time, the ones that I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is okay. I feel this is good. This
Mm,
I want to watch. I want to keep listening. It's when it's a Japanese teacher, who's actually
exactly. Yeah. I was
really
gonna
heavy
say
accent,
it's
and he's. Do you know what I mean? Um,
yeah, yeah.
as not that, then I just
Yeah.
get a bit deconstructed, and do you know what I mean?
Uh,
Overly all the
frustrated.
yeah, and there's all the disciplines are coming in, the social science, the what I mean,
Mm.
and it's just like, well, how is it? This is none of this that you're saying is helping. None of this is. Do you see what I'm saying? So how have you dealt with that aspect, or do you see? Well, I guess you've dealt with it by going to Japan, is what you said, which is understandable.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're right. I know exactly what you're talking about. And the thing about Shin Buddhism in America is it has a long history, over 100 years. Well over 100 years now, and it's there's a lot that can be said about all of that that other people can probably say better than I can. It's multi-generational.
Mm,
It's in a foreign country. It's not in Japan. It's far from the Hongwanji. It's in a society that is largely not Shin Buddhist at all.
yeah.
And there was a gradual process of just it kind of became Americanized, I want to say, for lack of a better term, where um, you know, I remember a friend of mine I think at Gardenia Buddhist Church here in California. He's a priest, and he's a serious, Jodo Shinshu priest. And he, they did like a study about their seeing, the Sunday, they have Sunday schools, they kind of imitated, Christianity so that they could fit in, early on, and it sort of stuck that way. And they did a survey of like their Sunday school teachers, people who teach at these Buddhist churches on the Sunday school for kids. And they found out like that hardly any of them even knew who Amida Buddha or Dharmakara Bodhisattva was.
So bad.
Just kind of a mind blowing
So bad.
statistic. It's so bad. And it's just a gradual decay, and kind of there is also the aspect where the life of the religion is not really identity as a Japanese American, but in America, there is that aspect where you have kind of ethnic religions where it's kind of more of a something you do because your father did it,
Yep.
And his father did it, going back to when they were in a foreign country. And it's more of it
Yep.
becomes more of like a community cultural thing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
This is just my observation, right? Now, that being said, there are good teachers. They're very few and far between, in my opinion, in the Buddhist churches of America. But a lot of them went to Japan, like my friend Ray, Reverend Ray. He actually, similar to me, he had major issues with the BCA, the Buddhist Churches of America, when the head of that organization was promoting zazen as like a practice in the temples, which is problematic.
Yeah.
And he, went to Japan and studied at in Kyoto, and basically became a priest independently of the BCA. In other words, not going through there. So he's kind of a rogue, sort of a rebel,
So did he become a priest through the Hongwanji in Japan? Like, do you just went directly?
Yeah, exactly. He went directly, and then I think he was affiliated with the International Center there, and that's how he was able to receive Tokudo.
Okay. International.
Go ahead.
Hongwanji International Center. Where is that?
It's in Kyoto, not far from the head temple, the Hongwanji, Nishi Hongwanji. Gotcha. And it's basically it's like their office that sort of interfaces with Hongwanji groups around the world, basically. Like there's a temple in Nepal. There are groups. There's actually a lot of groups in Taiwan and Hong Kong. And they are I have met them, and they are extremely, how to put it? They say Nexhin in Japanese, but they're extremely devoted. Like, they are really, really seriously seekers of the Dharma, like on a level that's, way beyond what I am capable of.
Which part of the Hongwanji is that? Where is that?
It would be Taiwan and Hong Kong. So basically Taiwanese and Hong Kong lay people who are
Jodo Shinshu.
It was spread there through the missionary activities of several Jodo Shinshu priests, and there's a very, very enthusiastic, I would say, community of Jodo Shinshu believers there. And of course, they're coming from a Chinese background, not Japanese. So it's interesting.
And I know that they're both pretty in general, like with whatever sort of spirituality in Taiwan, they are pretty intensely spiritual in general. So it kind of makes sense. Of Jodo Shinshu, that it would be, in this similar way that they would express that, because it's like a totally different culture. The culture in Hong Kong and Taiwan from the Chinese culture there from the mainland, at least the sort of
totally, it's its own
main
unique
part of it. Anyway,
I think I got a little off track, but I was saying, you asked how did I come to terms with the problems in the American
exactly.
And I basically took what was good from it and just left and made connections with people who are authentic teachers primarily in Japan. And it's true, you come here and you will meet people who are high level, priests, like Kobai Sensei is a good example, who are, they actually believe in the Jodo Shinshu teaching and Dharma, and that was reassuring to me, because I was kind of like, sometimes you might look at the American side of things and think, well, this is all interesting, but does anybody actually believe this stuff?
Exactly. That's what I mean. Like, why even,
I mean,
is the point?
they might like say the Nimbutsu once or twice a year, but is there anybody who actually, like, in a religious sense, like, thinks this is
True.
something to devote your life to? And you come to Japan, and it's like, oh yeah, if you go to a temple, whenever they have an event, you will meet people who have devoted their lives to Jodo Shinshu. I mean, in a deep engagement with the Dharma. And so for me, but the language barrier is a big thing. You have to overcome that. I kind of was able to, and I studied Japanese at college, and just practice is basically what it is. But and that led to me, when I was living in Kyoto, I would actually attend the morning service at Nishi Hongwanji, the head temple itself, and the chanting Shoshinge and all of that, and it's all great experience. But ultimately, the connections and the friendships is all extremely important, but there is a sense in which you have to kind of find your own way, kind of within all of that. I guess it's probably the same for any religion or any branch of Buddhism, really. There is, I mean, you receive guidance, but it's up to you to follow that guidance, right? And for me, my guiding light has always been teachers who are authentically teaching, what is written and what is taught in the text, by Shinran Shonin and Rinyo Shonin, and but it's a challenge, I would say. I can recommend to you, one. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, the one, to me, the reason I'm doing this is because it's true and real to me. Like, that's why I'm pursuing it. If it weren't true and real, I wouldn't be pursuing it.
Wasting your time, right?
Yeah. Just would not.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of gotten to the point where it's the only thing to me that's true and real, so if I start to hear the things, like, I just was watching one the other day, I'm like, it started out good, and it just, this one talk, and it was BCA talk, and I'm like, if you're just deconstructing it this way and having all these other, bringing all this, do you actually believe it? Like, does it, do you know what I mean? Is it any more real to you than any other, like,
academic project?
Yeah, exactly. And to me, it just, that's just nothing for me. It's like, okay, that's another thing I'm not going to watch anymore. Because to me, what is the point if it's not something that's real? Do you see what I mean? True and real.
Totally. Yeah.
I just don't have time for it. It wouldn't,
right.
And it wouldn't be compelling to me. There's this saying that I encountered when I was involved with 12-step groups, and there's a passage of one of their literature that says, the message that must grip these people must have depth and weight. And really rings true to me with Jodo Shinshu. It's like, when the message that they're giving doesn't have depth and weight, and is not a true transmission, it It does not grip me. It does not hold me. It does not compel me.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me want to listen. When it is true, when it is the right, when it's a good teacher and it's a good, you know what I
Mm,
mean, really sticking to the teachings, then it does, it does
mm,
make me want to listen, um,
right.
automatically. It's like I want to. Whereas if I hear this other stuff,
Yeah.
it just, I don't. I just am like, nope, that is,
Yeah.
you see what I mean? So, um,
Totally. And you know, there is the same exact same problem in Japan too, where some temples, some priests, they're a priest because their dad was a priest and his dad was a
yeah,
priest, going back to
yeah,
Rinyo Shonin, and there's a fossilization that occurs, and there's also one problem is well, it's called seiken banashi in Japanese, which means like secular talk, where you go to hear about the Dharma and you end up hearing about what the priest, did on his vacation or had for dinner last night. And it's a very vague kind
yeah,
of, not really, and I ate this and
yeah,
I thought, how grateful I am that I can eat food, that kind of stuff. It's not really gonna spiritually, it's not directed to the teaching of Jodo
yeah,
Shinju. It's like just a vague kind of light talk, and that's a problem in Japan as well. Again, good teachers of Jodo Shinshu are rare here in Japan too. It's just that they're less rare than in other places.
right.
and and um, and another problem, the Nishi Hongwanji is a huge organization, and it has problems, and it has critics of those problems, and you know, I have a friend who's a longtime priest here in Japan who critiques the Hongwanji quite a bit, actually, and says that, you know, there's an organization called Shinron Kai,
Yeah,
and
heard that. I
you
have
probably
heard of
know
that.
about that, yeah. And they developed as like a sort of a study group and sort of like Soka Gakkai, I guess. And then, but their leader became more and more personally forceful within the organization. It kind of turned into like a cult, where you couldn't disagree with the
Yeah,
leader or you were thrown out, excommunicated,
yeah,
all kinds of stuff that doesn't really fit with true Jodo Shinshu. And they also started to change the teaching and emphasize stuff that isn't correct understanding. Um, but they got a lot of members, and the reason is that the Nishi Hongonji, by and large, doesn't really take this stuff seriously. So when people from the Nishi say they've been to a Nishi temple, but they really have a drive, a spiritual yearning for liberation, or they're thinking about, the afterlife and these things. Well, they may find, if they bring this up with their priest, that he'll just sort of laugh and shrug it off, say, "Oh, you don't need to worry about that." And there are some really, really bad priests in Jodo Shinshu temples who will say stuff like, "Well, since you were born in a Jodo Shinshu temple, you don't need to worry about Shinji. You're all taken care of. You're already part of the community. You're all good." And that's, of course, an incorrect,
yeah,
uh, that a person who says that is essentially being an obstacle to the
yeah.
Dharma.
That's exactly what they're doing.
And there are people like that in Jodoshin, in the organization, and it drives people who are serious seekers to look elsewhere.
Yeah,
And my
yep,
friend in Japan said the reason the Shinrankai has so many members is because they're filling a spiritual vacuum
yep,
that the mainstream Jodo Shinshu is not addressing.
yeah, exactly.
Now, it's
Exactly.
more complicated than that. I mean, it is unfortunate that sometimes people are just drawn to these cults of personality and these, uh, kinds of things. So that's an issue too. But he has a point, and I do think, you know, I mean, like any religious organization that's been around for centuries and has a hierarchy and all of this. I mean, the Nishi Hongwanji is really no different than any other in that regard. So it's something that you have to, and you don't even need to become a member of the Nishi Hongwanji, in my opinion. I mean, you can be an independent, Shin Buddhist if it turns out that's what is a better fit for you.
Mm.
And a lot of people are. I mean, people don't necessarily get plugged in and like get super active in a certain temple. Some people are really sincere and serious seekers, but they kind of go around and listen to different teachers who are reliable, and
Okay.
aren't necessarily even don't necessarily I mean, I've known people who haven't even necessarily taken the Kikyoshiki and who are still, interested in Jodo Shinshu and so on. And so it's not these things aren't requirements. But if you feel led to do them, you are free to do them. In my case, it was just something I wanted to do. And so it was meaningful to me. And so with Kobai Sensei's help, I was able to do it. But everybody has a different circumstances, different journey, different place. I would say the important thing is, really digging into the teaching and understanding it, spiritually, right? And for that, of course, good teachers are indispensable. One person I could recommend to you is and whenever I recommend, it's not like I 100% agree with everything they say, because there isn't the person like that in the world, right? I mean, I don't even always 100% agree with everything that Kobai Sensei says. But someone I can recommend to you as a
Yeah.
as a reliable teacher would be my friend Yuki Fujihara at the Oregon Buddhist Church. And
Okay. Yeah.
actually,
Does he
if
give?
you look at,
Is he the main priest?
yeah,
I've listened to talks of that. Of that.
and he
And that's
actually does
pretty good.
videos. Yeah, and he has a video series where, like, I think every day,
Mhm.
almost, or every week, he actually goes through Shinran Shonin's writings
Yeah.
and explains them, and that would be good for you too, because you could be introduced to like Shoshinge and some of the liturgy and so on. That is a major part of all. It's kind of, as I've mentioned, it's common to all you know authentic Jodo Shinshu schools or traditions. So yeah, if you were interested in
One.
checking
Yeah,
out
that
some
is.
of his videos, that would be
Yeah, he is definitely one of the ones that I was referring to earlier. That was the good. Is definitely one of the good ones that I've listened
the
to.
good ones. Yeah, there's the
Good.
good, the bad, and the ugly. There's the
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
good, the bad, and the ugly.
Exactly.
He's one of the good.
He's really one of the good ones. Yeah, and I've been listening to one of the series.
Yeah.
The more recently, it's got a lot of parts to it, but and obviously he goes through the sort of service every day, the Shoshinge and then the actual Dharma
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
at the end of that. But I personally do want to be involved. I want to be fully
Mm,
involved with the Sangha, with a teacher, with a
hmm.
Sangha, do you know what I mean? That is important to me. That is very important
Yeah,
to me. In this, because it's indicated in the teachings that is important itself. You know
right,
what I mean?
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, Rinyo Shonin says, especially we should meet, and
At least,
then they were, like a dojo, right?
yep. exactly. So yeah, or at least the Dharma masters indicate that this is important. So
Mm,
so it is, and it makes sense. And I also just want that, that is important to me, to
yeah.
my own, to be fully part of the sangha,
Hmm.
a sensei, have a good teacher, the Dharma,
Right.
have and be involved in the
Mm,
actual, what's the word, liturgy of it, and do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
Properly,
The actual kind of
properly, yeah,
daily, so to speak, practice, even though we don't call it practice, but
yeah.
the the practical aspect of, yeah, not just the theoretical. I do recommend. I do feel like people sometimes, unfortunately, because Jodo Shinshu sort of doesn't offer a concrete, practice like Zen, where it's like, okay, sit on the mat and do it, do
Yeah.
Zazen,
Yeah, yeah,
close your eyes, and
yeah.
somebody will whack you if you fall asleep. We unfortunately don't have that, system,
Oh,
and well, unfortunately, in some senses. Um,
well,
so it can be
um,
hard for
we
people
do have
to,
just, deeply reflect and just listen. Listen to the Dharma.
right, right, right. But that's hard to understand if you're a beginner, and so there's a sense in which, I always feel or recommend that people, like, learn Shoshinge, for example, is,
Mhm.
that's Shinran Shonin's actual words that he wrote. It's common to all the schools of Jodo Shinshu. The only differences would be small. There's differences in how it's chanted, but
Mm.
everybody chants it. So every school chants it, just in slightly different, the tones may be slightly different, that kind of thing. Um, and that is actually what Rinyo Shonin um, set up as our, service book. It's like the Book of Common Prayer of Jodo Shinshu, and he
Mm.
printed it. He actually it was wood block printed by Rinyo Shonin. It was Shoshinge and then the Wasan,
Yeah.
and then, it was distributed to all the temples and dojos associated with the Hongwanji, and it was like a big hit. It became a bestseller, to the point where the other schools who didn't do it started picking up copies and chanting it. So it's really important, I feel,
Mm.
that we respect, that, because that's what Rinyo Shonin, it's the book he gave us to do.
No, exactly. I agree. So I do, to me, it is important to eventually get involved with all of that. Um, and I think we've talked about the Oregon um, temple before. So I mean,
Yeah.
and do they have online services that people can join? Like, can you just join it, or do you have to be
Oh
kind
yeah,
of?
absolutely. In fact, they're even streamed live on YouTube.
It
I don't
looks
know if
like,
the time
yeah,
zone
it
would
looks
be.
that way. But like, can you
Yeah.
be part of that? Like, can you be actually in a room's, like, kind of, let's say just the equivalent of a Zoom kind of meeting? Do they do it that way where you're kind of in the room
Um,
as a type of thing,
I
or?
don't think you would see your face on a YouTube stream, but I think you can. There's like a live chat, so you
That you
can
Okay, so
comment,
it's the usual.
and then yeah, I have seen people comment, and then whoever is running the Oregon site, I'm assuming it's
Do they
Yuki, Reverend Yuki, but he
do
will
they
actually answer people's questions
where they
sometimes
do
too.
do they have anything like a study group, a Dharma talk group, but a Dharma study group,
Mm.
you can interact, that sort of thing? Is
Yeah,
there?
I'm not 100% sure. They may, I know they do the live services, and I'm not sure about the group. If there is a group, I don't know if it would be online or not. So that's something you could
Okay,
I would have
invest.
to investigate or ask. I could ask Reverend Fujihara.
Look at it. I just haven't done that yet. But yeah, I should,
Yeah.
see if they have a website and see what it says and things. I have looked at others.
Yeah, but it's challenging. Especially if you live in, well, there really isn't much on the East Coast. But the state of Shin Buddhism in America is just such that, I mean, you will find community, certainly, but will you necessarily find community that is like, let's sit around and talk about Shinron Shonin's writings? that's going to be a hard thing to come across. I feel in America, it's just it's kind of so far gone, and people like Reverend Fujihara, who are coming as overseas ministers or missionaries in a sense to sort of try to spread the actual teaching here are kind of they're a minority, and there aren't many of them, so.
It's like going to a it's become like that, where even though Jodo Shinshu is here, it's like unknown. So you have to, the actual teaching is unknown, so you have to send missionaries to
unfortunately.
Part of even that happening within Jodo Shinshu, I sort of recognize that as part of Mappo, that the Dharma, our understanding that, there's nothing wrong with the Dharma at all, any of the Buddha Dharma. It's our capacity to understand it, and that would include even Jodo Shinshu, even Pure Land Buddha will be, our ability to even grasp those, and for those to be, and the ability for those to be properly transmitted would degrade, as part of that. Eventually will be no,
exactly.
There'll be no Dharma, taught. There won't be, and there'll be the Buddha name. For like 100 years after less than 10,000 years we have left in the declining Kalpa type of thing. So so I understand that, I get that, so that's part of it too, where I go, well, it's going to be like this. We're in Mappo, we are less than 10,000 years in, do you know what I mean, away from the very bottom of the Kalpa. What I mean? So like it's that's how it is. So part of me, there's an acceptance of, okay, that's how it is, but part of it is very frustrating, because I want that very and that's where I have to believe that somehow, and this is something that's come since we've been talking, is that somehow that will be sorted out, by Amida. If I continue to do what I'm, what I mean?
Right. There is a sense,
in whatever way that is, that will be something will be provided for there. So if you see what I mean.
I totally do. In Japanese, there's a word, go in, which refers to in, meaning a cause or conditions, and it means like the causes and conditions that lead or that connect us together. So for example, through the cause and condition of Jodo Shinshu and Shinron Shonin's teaching, we are able to have these Zoom sessions, and discuss the Dharma. That's a good example. And so you will notice as you follow the path that there is go in the working of the causes and conditions that are ultimately derived from Amida's vow. Everything is this is all being worked out and directed to us, and it can be quite sort of, how to put it, you get that tingling feeling when you realize how things have have led you, you
Yeah.
know, to this point. And so it is really important, and it is something that you will, I think, discover as you go further and further. And also, Rinyo Shonin, you know, great quote by him as always. He said, you know, the prosperity of our school does not lie in how many members it has. And he said that if there's even one person of Shinjin, of true faith, then it can be said that this school is prospering. So that's
Wow.
that's always been an encouraging word from Rinyo Shonin for me. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that is great. That is great to hear that if there's even one at any time.
Yeah. And that really changed the way I even thought about Jodo Shinshu. You know, it's not about numbers. It's not about how many seats you're filling and the pews. It's about true engagement in personal, you know, a personal encounter with this Dharma, just like Shinran, you know, experienced and sung about and taught about. And that's what we are now having the opportunity to do. So, yeah, you know, there's that old expression, don't curse the darkness, light a candle, you know? And that's like, we can complain about the fact that, you know, there's the Hongwanji or the organization is in such a sorry state. But at the end of the day, you've got to kind of find your candle in the darkness. You know, you've got to find your light. And, you know, hopefully that will be Amita's vow, as Shinran says. It's the torch in the dark night of ignorance. So as long as we're being pointed to that through Shinran, and hopefully, you know, through people who are good teachers, who are pointing us to Shinran's words and in the teaching, then we can say that we're going in the right direction, you know. And that's where Rinyo Shonin's quote about words about, you know, if there's even one person of Shinjin and of true faith, then we can say that this school is prospering. It totally changes your perception, right, of how because normally when we think of religions, we think, well, they want to get as many members as they can, and, you know, spread across the continent.
Really vital. And
Whereas, and Rinyo Shonin just sort of flips that over on its head.
If there's one, then there's that's prospering. There's always kind of one at any given time. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is just true of Buddhism generally. I mean, Buddhism is you know, the fact that there are so many Buddhists is because so many people have encountered Shakyamuni's teaching for themselves and found it to be vital and salvific and you know, essential to their lives. That's why the Buddhist community began in the first place, you know. And so if you think about it, it is a kind of a truth of how it is the truth of what Buddhism is, you know, as a teaching and as a religion. So
very true. Very true. Yeah. So it's that's been on my mind a lot. That was just something I wanted to talk to you about. And so I'll stick with the organ. And if I find, I think I'll just, if I find, you know, stick with something like that, and I'll keep looking for the others. I probably won't, unless it's really, I find someone like that, I probably won't give it too much time, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, he is rare. I would say I don't personally know of anybody else in the BCA currently. I've met him in real life, actually, not just the internet. I actually attended the Florin Buddhist church where he was the resident minister when I was a student at Sacramento State University
Mm.
in Sacramento, and I met him, and I attended some of his. He did some great lectures on Buddhist. His I think his his like doctorate or his field of study at Yukoku University was actually Yogacara, the mind-only school of
Yeah,
Vasubandhu Bodhisattva, who's also, of course, the second
one of the Dharma masters. Yeah,
master of our school, right?
yeah,
And I attended a couple of course, he gives Dharma talks, but there was like a special study session where he would sort of talk about Buddhism, kind of more for a general audience. It was sort of like an introduction to a lot of the concepts, and but it was all really good. It was right on, and he would always point out things that I had also sort of confirmed for myself elsewhere. And so my confidence in him as a teacher was greatly heightened by that experience. Yeah. And then we stayed friends via the internet, when I was in Japan as well. So yeah, he's a very reliable teacher. And and the thing is with any teacher, I mean, if they say something and you think, well, I'm not sure about this, I might want to confirm that, and then you should ask somebody else. Get a second opinion. You'll probably find that. Yeah, get a second opinion. You'll probably find that there may be a point where people don't agree all the time. I mean, it's another aspect about these things, is you're not going to get everybody to always agree, but everyone agrees on the important things, right? The basic, So if you ask any good teacher, what is the cause of our birth in the Pure Land? They will tell you, it's Shinjin, it's the working other power, the Shinjin that arises from the other power, the working of Amida's vow, which is given to us freely in the name Namo Amida Butsu. So that you'll get that same answer no matter who you ask. And then, people will have different perspectives, right? It's not necessarily that it's wrong, it's that people have different points of view. So part of the challenge of any religion and any spiritual path is, looking at different points of view and then finding what is my, how do I engage with this? What is my, point of view, so to speak. And of course, in Buddhism, we want to avoid, mere opinions, right? the thicket of views, as Shakyamuni said. But you have to.
What did Shakyamuni call it? What did you say?
The thicket of views, he called it.
The thicket of views, yeah.
Yeah,
off in the weeds, in other words.
Off in the weeds of, speculation and opinion and all the things that our calculating minds love so much.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I encounter a lot with a lot of the BCA and different things like that. It's the thicket of views rather than the actual Dharma.
Yeah, and another recommendation I'd like to make too is, because we have the works of Shinran in English, the translations in English. I mean, you can and you should read it for yourself. Read
exactly.
Yeah, and Rinyo Shonin, again, he would say, especially the young people, he would say, just read as much as you can, while your eyes are still good. Read the texts, of our tradition, and then you won't regret it later. It's kind of a foundational exercise, in my opinion, is really engaging with, not just with what somebody says about what Shinran wrote or what he taught, but actually engaging with what he actually wrote and taught. That is an important aspect. And it's one of the reasons why we chant Shoshinge, because that is Shinron's unfiltered words. That is what he put pen to paper and wrote those very words, and they're now being transmitted directly to our ears. So, this is, of course, the guidance of a good teacher is essential, but you don't want to neglect the engagement with the text, the scriptural text itself as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, that I definitely hear that. And I have Kyogyo Shinshu. I have Tenisho. I have and I have the book with the with Renyo's letters.
Okay. Yeah.
All those.
Do you own a copy of the collected works of Shinron?
I don't. I just have Kyogo Shinsho itself. That's
okay. I would highly recommend that you pick up an actual print copy of the collected works of Shinron, because one of the major parts, some of the more easy to understand commentaries and works that he wrote are actually not in Kyogyo Shinsho. Kyogyo Shinsho is like very advanced and hard to wrap your head around.
Yes.
And and it was primarily written to defend Jodo Shinshu, or Honen's teaching, against fellow scholarly monks who were critiquing it. So some of the stuff is just way over the heads of you and me.
Ordinary.
But Shinron also wrote a lot of commentary on Essentials of Faith Alone and other texts, and also the hymns, his wasan, the Japanese hymns. And none of that is included in the book you have, Kyogyo Shinsho. So, if you are serious about this, I would say investing in a copy of the collected works of Shinron is going to would be a really good, and then, you can take notes as you read it. You can relate it to, if you're, studying Kobai Sensei's books, or a teacher's books. I think it would be really, really helpful. So I would highly recommend, and I don't think it's that expensive. In fact, I'll send you the link to the Buddhist bookstore where you can order it from if you're interested.
Oh, definitely. Yes, please. Yeah. Please. Yes, please do. You there still? Hello?
Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, I'm just listening for the next. Yeah, I think we're about up with our hour, but is there anything you'd like to add?
The other thing I wanted to say was also since we've been, since our discussions, and since I kind of got everything on the table, including aspects of where that habituated thing where I was getting off and looking at other religious beliefs in the 95 non-Buddhist ways vein of things, as that's totally died down, since we discussed it, of where I don't even, it's just not even there. So at the moment anyway, which is good. I'm very glad for that, because that is just that's a pretty major obstacle to things, or at times. So, but that is
maybe you just needed to get it off your chest, so to speak. Sometimes sometimes with these doubts and questions, you sort of say them or you ask them and then you realize that they weren't that important after all, and
No.
it kind of just the asking of it kind of resolves the doubt, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Just getting it up and out, and
Yeah,
through the process, this aspect of deep listening, of with some, with a Dharma friend or a teacher or whatever, somehow that does something inconceivably. That, but anyway, that I just wanted to say that has definitely, happened, and
good.
or is, which I'm very relieved about. As very relieving, because that obstacle, it just makes you start to question everything. It's like, well, what, why am I even
kind of a distraction?
Yeah, major pain in the head.
Now, how long are you going to be in the States, or until when?
Till next Saturday we travel back.
Okay.
So it won't be too much longer. And then
so our next session, probably maybe in a couple weeks from now, might work.
Yeah.
Then.
So probably, yeah. It would probably need to be. I mean, when I go back, I have the whole next week off. Because it's a national holiday, it's the Jubilee. So I extended
okay.
my days off into that from my annual leave. So it actually is the whole week. I have that whole next week off. So if there's a day in there, we could,
Gotcha. Okay.
And I know that's during the week, but I'll be off, so I can, I'll be more flexible, be able to be more flexible.
Sure. Yeah, let's try to set something up in maybe a couple weeks or so from now, and we can meet again and discuss any questions that have come up.
Yeah, definitely will. So yeah, definitely send me that website then, the Buddhist bookstore that you use.
I will. I'll send the link to you right after we're done here. So
excellent. That would be very good. So, well, fantastic. Thanks again for being flexible earlier and for your time. As always, it is very essential and very appreciated.
Yeah, my pleasure. And looking forward to talking to you again, Scott.
All right. Take care.
All right. Take care. You too.
See ya. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Bye.